My views on Canada have changed dramatically recently, and certainly since the U.S. elections, even more so. Canada has a great story to tell right now, and the numbers are showing it. It is probably the only developed country to show significant increase in transaction activity this year, while all other markets are seeing a slowing, a decline, as investors are backing off and becoming a little bit more hesitant. We've seen a surge of investment activity in Canada. And that includes almost a fourfold increase in cross-border investment into Canada. And just talking here at the conference to a number of colleagues and clients, Canada's emerged as the bastion of political stability compared to many other places. So I think it's very positive. Starting to hear that even the resource-driven areas like Calgary are starting to turn and probably have hit bottom. So that's been very important. But certainly Vancouver and Toronto are very well positioned to capture even more of the cross-border capital flows, and we'll see. But it's right now in the marketplace has been the shining star.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges in Canada is you have an outside factor, and that's the influx of Chinese visitors, which has been very important to the development, both in Vancouver and in Toronto. And as we see the slowing of the Chinese economy as they're trying to manage that, that will obviously negatively impact here. Obviously, the second issue is the 30% growth of GDP dependence on oil sands, which again has been slowing when oil is half the price of what it was before. So those are the two big impediments, which again cause a question as to what supply and demand will be for real estate. However, I do believe that the economy is continuing to evolve and diversify, and thus there will be steady demand for real estate to meet that diversification requirements.
Yes, they have changed. Canada's economy, with your emphasis on resources, natural resources, whether it's mining, whether it's oil sands, whether it's lumber, have not done well over the last 3 or 4 years. I think that's going to start to change. It's going to start to change for the better. The reason is your big neighbor and the group that buys the most of your exports is going to be doing very well. Tax cuts, fiscal stimulus, and growth in the U.S. economy is going to benefit Canada. U.S. is going to be moving up from a 1.5% to 1.8% GDP growth number to something more in the mid-2s. That's going to be a serious growth in demand for a lot of what Canada makes. It'll help your economy. The big worry is the talk from President-elect Donald Trump on undoing NAFTA and trying to interrupt that flow of goods. But he's much more focused on Mexico. I think that if you think about the way in which Canada and the U.S. economies are interlinked, the same companies, whether it's Ford Motor, whether it's GM, whether it's GE, they do the same kinds of things in Canada and the U.S. They're interlinked. And to disrupt those flows would be really bad for everybody. So I'm pretty optimistic that growth in the U.S. will translate into growth in Canada. And that was not necessarily a view I had 30 days ago, but it is a view I've got now.
I can only speak to that as an observer, because we only invest in U.S. real estate. We don't invest in Canadian real estate. However, we have a lot of partners who are Canadian investors, and what we've seen and what they tell us is that capital values are extremely high, and that's why a lot of the capital is actually coming to the U.S. And their expectations is that it's going to remain that way, and that the capital will continue to come out of Canada into other comparable opportunities.
I'd say they're more positive. Actually, if you look at what's happened in the US and the UK recently, I think Canada suddenly looks like a safe haven. There have been parts of the Canadian market that clearly have been softening. I think most obviously in Calgary and parts of Alberta, given what's happened with the oil price. But I'd say Canada's set very fair now. And in markets such as Toronto and Vancouver, I think you're going to see really strong performance. There's real good momentum in the market. So we feel very positive about Canada alongside our international operations as well.